Welcome back to On Cycle. Thanks for coming back for episode 2. Hope you appreciated our intro episode. And now, today, we're actually getting some real content about the things that we want to talk about. You know, the pieces of the puzzle and drum corps that we really want to kind of take apart, divide up, and really kind of discuss some of the pros and cons of things, right? So today, the very first thing we're going to talk about is DCA, now DCI All-Age, versus DCI the way that everybody knows DCI, right? Junior Corps style.
Yeah. A little bit of an introduction. First of all, what is DCI All-Age? Since, I think it's pretty new on the scene. I think a lot of people, as we kind of talked about in last episode, don't really know what to make of it, right? As well as differences between the two circuits, that and DCI All-Age versus open class and world class.
Yeah, because they're different but similar in a way. It's almost like a natural transition from one to the other. If you know DCI, traditional DCI, you have your big 12, big 17 corps that go out and they tour pretty much across the entire country for those 90 days. They're out and about, spring training, all that kind of good stuff, right? And then you have some of your smaller corps, your old school Div 2, Div 3 for all you old heads out there. What are they? Open class now is what they're called?
Open class,
yeah, open class corps. They do like a modular tour schedule, right? Where they go on tour for a 2-week chunk or a 3-week chunk here, and then they come home. They take 2 or 3 weeks off. They kind of do like another mini drive up camp, and then they go back on tour for the last half of the season to kind of polish everything off at the end, right? Which is awesome, and that's really great for young members, newer drum corps kids that are trying to get out there, and it keeps the cost low too, because such a significant cost is obviously in the tour fees. And then you have what's now DCA, now DCI All-Age, which is kind of like the natural transition down, which is just weekend drum corps.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
We have the same basic schedule. We run from Thanksgiving all the way up to we used to do Labor Day. We used to have an extra 3 weeks in the season.
we used to be the last corps to perform for any given summer.
Yeah.
If we went on last.
Right. Exactly. Right. We were Labor Day weekend for the last 60 years. Yeah. Right. And now was the second week in August.
Yeah.
And then we're done with everybody else. We're going to have finals with all you guys out there in the DCI world, and it's going to be great. I think one of the things that I immediately thought of was like, oh no, we're not going to be able to absorb those extra DCI kids coming off tour.
Yep.
That hop in last minute,
snag them to
fill in some of our holes that some of the corps end up having at the end of the year. Which we did that 2 years ago, didn't we?
We did that in 22. We've done it a lot of years before. Yeah. I mean, there's some corps when it was still DCA. There were some corps that banked on that.
Oh yeah.
That had kind of kept 3 or 4 holes, and we're like, oh well, some cadets people or some people that are marching this corps, some people that we had, they'll come back and they'll fill this hole and learn the show in the last couple of weeks.
In 20 minutes, because they're in tour shape, so they just come back
they're
in
tour mode, and they're robotic,
dialed in, right? So, which is crazy. There's actually a rule created back in the 80s for that. And, and I don't know how true this is, but this is always, because this is how a drum corps works. It's all rumor and mystery,
rumors.
Right?
Yeah.
But there was a rule created.
Bob Barker died.
By the because of the Bushwhackers, back in the 80s when they were winning all their championships, they would write their show for 56 horns. And then they would do most of the season with 25, 27 horns. And they would just be losing constantly because their show looked like a bunch of choppy nonsense.
Like Swiss cheese.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, they get the DCI kids that come off tour and then they backfill 30 holes with monsters because they can play, they can move, and all the crazy the stuff that they put together for all that time. They ended up coming in, then just going from basically 10th place and 9th place in DCA to first place by finals in the last 3 weeks. So they created a rule, and I'm going to botch this rule for all my DCA fans out there. I think it's 70% of the core that you write for can't be backfilled at the end, or the back 30% you have to have for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
You can't backfill X or whatever it is.
If you got that rule wrong, get after him in the comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you know what the rule is, post a link in the comments, put it in the shares, let people know that I'm totally wrong.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what I'm talking about. If I'm foolish, then just also put that in the comments.
Bring us all your rage engagement.
Yeah, all the rage. If you guys know me, which I suspect that most of you who are watching this right
starting
now
off at least
know me, I expect absolute destruction in the comments.
Yeah,
because I would just expect nothing less. So yeah, I mean, really, and the biggest difference with the touring portion of things is when you get on a bus and you go, you're just gone, and obviously we're a weekend drum corps, right? Which is, it has its huge benefits and it has its, its
drawbacks.
It's drawbacks,
right?
of course, right? Exactly. So where do we want to start with that? Do we want to start with drawbacks? Do we want to start with benefits of the full tour versus just this little tiny weekend thing?
So I would like, if we're people aren't familiar with DCI all age, so let's we can focus on that. What are the benefits? Why is it weekend only? Right.
Oh, great.
And then the obvious thing is it's all age. It's meant for people that aren't in school anymore, right? That have full jobs, right? So kind of by necessity has to be all weekend.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can't ask people to. I don't think you can put in for 3 months, 3 months of PTO in the middle of the summer to go tour around the country.
Yeah. Tell my metal shaving boss, where I work in a factory, be like, I'm gonna go play band for 30 days. I'll see you later.
Yeah. Some people might be able to do that, but most, at DCI world class, the assumption, everyone has to be 21 under. The assumption is pretty much everyone's in college. Right? Or they're at least, maybe working jobs here or there that they can actually leave for 3 months.
Right.
So we by necessity, in order to balance that, and we have people of, full professional careers and everything, it's got to be just weekends. So it varies, I think, from corps to corps. I don't know if you know my other corps like default weekend schedule.
They're pretty much exactly the same.
Similar to ours.
Yeah, I know you've only done Reading for your career, and I've been in 2 other corps. They're basically identical.
Yeah.
There's a Friday night you come in. Once the season gets started, you come in Friday night. You're there 12 hours on Saturday. You're 8 to 8, and then
like a full DCI day.
Right, and then you're doing like an 8, maybe 9 o'clock to 4 to 6, depends on the corps.
On the Sunday.
Because also too, people travel from good distance and have to go back home. So
that's one of the big challenges, right? Is people, I went to a corps that was in Colorado. So I got to just fly out there. I fly out there at the beginning of spring training, and I don't have to worry about getting flights or anything. Here, you've got to worry about how do I get from where I live to where rehearsal is every weekend.
Right.
Less frequently in the summer. We sort of do the winter camp things like DCI. We do definitely more frequent winter camps. I mean, DCI pretty much does once a month, right? Because that's all you could ask people to do. But since most of our members are not flying from anywhere, we have some exceptions this year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And all the power to them. But since most of our people aren't flying from everywhere, we usually do like every other weekend, right in the winter. So to make up for some of that lost time of not being here every single day in the summer.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another little difference in schedule. Is our winter camp schedule is a little more intense.
Yeah.
Right. To try and backload that a little.
Right. And it's still like the normal process of building a show is still the same for every DCI corps, whether you're junior corps or all age. There's still people trying to put together a product that's high quality. You're trying to, instructors are trying to get together and do all the things that they have to do, develop. They're going to change things. If you've ever been on the design team side of things, it's just constant changes. So that the benefit for the every other weekend through the wintertime is that we kind of get to see things and change things a little bit more aggressively. With a little more time, because again, like you said, we don't have the time to refine it more later in the year because we're not together all day. So we spend a lot of time refining our product very early, or as early as we can. Like I know it's we're in April right now, and we've already been outside. We had to learn our whole opener.
Yeah, we had to learn
for this year.
Our opener, and we try and
what was it? April 4th, April 5th.
We probably got the first drill.
We finished our drill. The whole opener was done. Like,
it was pretty much written. It wasn't given to us, but it was pretty much written. It was in UDB.
Yeah, it was in UDB, right? Like everybody uses. So we're outside and we're early and we're getting into it
in the cold.
Yeah, when we're a Northeast group, not you West Coasters out there.
Yeah,
and get all the sunshine and fun stuff, and you Texans, yeehawing down there and being all great at camps. We have to be outside in the blistering cold doing ground rolls. Yeah, because Lydia
in the
hates
mud,
us. Because Lydia hates
snow.
us. You heard me, Lydia. Damn ground rolls. But yeah, so like it's a really great that's a small advantage I think that we have as an all age activity is that again instructors and people really get a chance to kind of really develop the show a little bit earlier because we have less time to do it once the summertime comes.
Yeah,
as versus the junior corps. But like you said, trying to get back and forth to camps, we're very regional when it comes to who and how and the people that we have involved. Is you got to be sort of close. right? You have to be
Yeah.
somewhat nearby in order to make that trek every single weekend,
Yeah.
right? And go back and forth. And that's a lot of mostly, honestly, just mostly brass, because the indoor color guard, indoor drumline are going on. WGI seasons are going on pretty
Yeah.
heavy too. So we end up not having a lot of those people around. Our guard really doesn't come in until April, which I would assume is kind of the same for DCI. I don't know.
I'm trying to remember. I obviously was not in color guard
Right.
as a DCI, but I mean, they were there. I think most of the camp weekends, at least the starting ones, to get like auditions. But it might be the same
Maybe
kind
similar
of
to that.
process. Cause
Same thing.
Yeah.
Any of you guard girls and guys out there that have that DCI experience, like when did you really start getting into camps and like getting in at it? Because we actually don't know.
yeah, I just showed up,
Right.
brass and
I just show up and play and try to move.
Yeah,
and,
get yelled
and
at
dance
and-
now because we have to do everything because we're the brass line because we're insane.
But yeah, I'm thinking of other benefits and drawbacks in terms of timing. Next thing that came to mind, if you don't have anything else for the
go ahead.
schedule stuff, next thing, big thing that came to mind was potential drawback for DCI all age in the weekend schedule we've got is maintaining like mindset and focus.
Yeah, such a hard one.
Yeah, because you get to DCI, you show up to all days, and you're like, this is my life for the next 80 days.
Right.
I don't got to think about anything except where my next dot is.
Right.
Right. Which can be grueling sometimes, but also, it helps keep you active, helps keep you engaged. Because you're constantly in drum corps mode, right?
Sure.
You never have to turn it off. We get to, go home, and every Friday night, I think it's honestly, that's like half the reason we have a like 3-ish hour Friday night rehearsal.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, sometimes we do use it. Last year we used it a lot to actually teach stuff, but like it feels like 90% of the time it's just like,
It's knocking dust off.
Yeah, exactly. We got 12 hours tomorrow.
Yeah.
We gotta sit. We gotta all get together and remember how to do drum corps a little bit because we have 4.5 days to forget.
Yeah, and it's you're absolutely right, and it is so hard. I would say it's so hard for younger kids to really understand that concept because they go back to sitting on the couch eating Cheetos and doing whatever they're doing and not being necessarily engaged all the time because it's their summertime, right? You're off from school, you're doing normal like off school stuff. And even some of the old heads out there, because we have the tendency of going, I've done drum corps before, I know what I'm doing, right? But it wears on you so aggressively to give up that time to not prepare yourself and then try and go back in. It's like running a marathon without training. It's so hard.
Because there's the mental and there's a physical component, right? It's getting your brain back in the space of drum corps, and it's also like, if you just do, our 2.5 days, our 24, I think, hours of total rehearsal time straight each weekend, and then you just are stagnant the whole week.
Right.
You can sometimes get away with that. But most of the time,
depends on who you are.
Yeah.
It really does.
But most of the time, that's another, that one I almost think is a double-edged sword, actually, the physical component.
Okay.
Because they've been great. If you, like you and I both this year, especially since I'm getting up there in years and you're, past 40.
I'm over the hill.
Yeah. Right. on the back nine, as it were. We're taking a little more care to like make sure that we're running an appropriate amount and like, getting our fitness in, looking at dieting stuff and stuff like that. So it can be a huge benefit, right?
Right.
Because if you, if part of your body starts to get bothered by something, if you're close to like an injury or part of you is getting worn, you can take the time that you need to rest a little bit and recover.
Yeah.
And then when you don't need that time to recover, you can spend it, training more, getting your strength up and preparing for the weekend again.
Right.
So it can be a great benefit because in DCI, you don't get that.
Yeah.
Right. My ankle, shins or ankle would start hurting. And I'd be like, I sure hope this goes away in the next few days as I march on it for 14 hours straight.
And at 20 years old, you kind of can, like you're pretty much indestructible at that point, depending on your general health, but most kids who are out there being active like that on a regular basis, even the people who go into camp, into training camp a little out of shape, they get into shape really quick, because your body, you're just capable of it at that age.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And you kind of have no choice but to do it.
You do it or you go home, right?
But yeah, I mean, I always think about our Horn Sergeant, Matt Heckman. I think this is his...
He's in 17
he's
also.
17 as well.
But he's 17 straight.
Basically straight, since 2007, just marching.
Yeah.
So he's...
Glassman alumni.
What is he? He's like 34 or something like that?
34, 35.
He aged out in 12, so he's probably 30, 32 or something.
Yeah, something like that, right.
So he's past his 30s. He's been marching for 17 years straight.
Yeah.
He generally doesn't have to wear like an ankle brace or anything.
Right.
But his one summer of DCI, he marched Glassman and rest in peace. He marched Glassman in 2012, and that was the one time he had to actually wear an ankle brace.
Right.
He's more than 10 years younger than he is now. But now he doesn't have to wear an ankle brace because he generally, takes care of himself and whatnot during the week. During DCI, though, he had to wear that thing because it was just, you just don't stop putting strain on it ever, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest advantages of the all-age activity is knowledge, right? Just being older.
Yep.
Being older and understanding your body better, understanding how hard it takes to push yourself, what your limits are, knowing how to get to the edge of those limits, how to balance and maintain your energy throughout the day. You see young kids come in all the time. Like I see it at our group all the time. They come in just like, let's go, and they're drinking soda and energy drinks, and then by 4 o'clock they are crushed, and they got the 10,000-yard stare at missing sets. You're like, just wandering around, because they couldn't figure out how to balance that, right? And I always say this is one of the things that I try to do, because I was that idiot kid too. When I was 15, 16 years old, I was drinking chocolate milk for lunch. Yeah, great idea. It's a quart of chocolate milk. Let's go do basics.
Yeah, it's 98 degrees outside, 80% humidity.
Exactly. It's just it's a terrible choice, right? And being the age that I am now, helping, the knowledge that I have is going to newer members, going to young kids that are doing this for the first time, who are a little maybe gun shy or don't understand how to prepare themselves and don't do those things, to go, hey, look, here's some things that you can do. And not only just telling them, but showing them what they can do. Because I always think that's the most important thing when it comes from an older person talking to a younger member, is really trying to engage them in the idea that, look, hey, man, like, I know you're young and I'm old, but these are things that are going to benefit you. It's the same way they benefit me, right? Yeah. Preparation is always good. This my mom always told me 6 P's. Proper, planning prevents piss poor procedure, right?
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So if you just take some time to prepare yourself, and that has to start with the physical, because the mental will break down so much quicker once the physical starts to go. Once you start feeling those aches and pains, once you start getting, like, oh, I ate too much for lunch, and you're just like, well, then your mental game is completely out the window. I had a busted knee the last 2 seasons, and I can't tell you how many times where, like, I'd be like, okay, I feel okay, and then as soon as that little bit of pain started to set in, because I had a torn meniscus and it was just crushing my knee, and I was like, oh my God.
And that's all you can think about. That's all I can think
about. Right, exactly. Cannot stress how important that stuff is. And I know, like, this year, we started this thing we call it the Mellow Mile, where just charging the mellophone section with, hey, get out there and go do some cardio. Go walk, go outside, do something to better yourself, because you're not going to be able to get in shape in training camp like you were, like you can on DCI on tour. So I think that's really the biggest thing from a physical. Is that where we're on? We're on physical right now.
Sort of. We kind of
we just trailed into different
but
places.
Physicality. Yeah, that's a big
right.
That's kind of the topic that we're on. Yeah, because you were talking about differences in age and what that can bring you. We can move on to that.
Sure, yeah.
That's what I wanted.
What a transition.
Yeah, exactly. I want to the benefits and limitations. You get DCI all age versus
just
world
DCI.
class. Yeah,
right.
In that, open class, world class, they're gonna have a max. I don't know, max year span of usually like 6 years max, maybe difference between
crazy
them.
Long, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Between when I was marching, youngest hornline member was 15, which is crazy that you're marching Blue Knights at 15.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. He went on to march Devils.
Oh,
good for him.
Of course he did,
Yeah.
I don't want. Let's not get into that. Right now.
Let's save the talk about Blue Devils.
Well, that'll be a whole segment.
Till a later episode.
My fear, frustration.
So him versus, I guess maybe that's a 7-year gap if there's some 22-year-olds with the bonus here.
Right.
Versus in DCI, DCI all age now.
Right.
We've got people down to, I think 15 is like the lower limit usually. Yeah. Around the same bottom cap, right? And then members up to 40 and 49 and 50 even.
I know there's a guy in cabs that's marching. He's in his 50s.
Yeah.
In his mid to late 50s, I think.
Right. So that really completely changes the whole dynamic, both of like what you can do, but also how you can benefit from that.
Sure.
Right. It can be a limitation a little bit sometimes, but not even.
Let me ask you
not
this.
any more than I think just being a weekend band is. Because I know we at Bucks, at least, we try to be like, doesn't matter what your age is, like we're going to be doing this, and it's on you to keep up with it.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Which I think, that kind of mentality probably varies from DCI all age to all age. Cause some, I don't know if other cores, might want to be like, hey, we want to be more inviting to older people that aren't able to keep up. But I think most cores nowadays still are pretty much like, we're going to do what we're going to do. And it's up to you. If you want to keep marching into your twilight years, it's up to you to be like, maintain that fitness, and you come in here and we'll take you. Right?
I can tell you, there's a couple of things about that I'll say is that when you get into those twilight years, right, and you get into those old age drum corps years, anybody still trying to do this activity at my age or older, I can tell you, at least for me, and I've talked to plenty enough friends that I have that are that age, the absolute last thing that we want to do is come in and be a problem, right? And and not keep up, right? Yeah. We spend so much time preparing in the off season because we have to, and for the most part, I would say 99.9% of us are musically pretty capable at this point in our lives. We've been playing for 30 years. Right? Like I'm in this drum corps. It's not like insanely difficult music. It's hard, it's just challenging while moving, but it's not like earth shattering, concert band music, or whatever it is, orchestral music.
Yeah.
So we're very capable and it's very consistent from year to year. So we're fine there, but being physically ready and not having to sit out because we got busted knees or busted ankles or because we're overweight or any of those other things too. I know all us old heads, we spend a lot of time and a lot of energy and effort making sure that we are not those people. And, it's almost like a power move against kids for us. We're like, I don't think you understand who you're dealing with here, Mr. Youngster.
Yeah.
You're talking to a man who's been around. We joke about this all the time. My core jacket is older than 70% of the horn line this year.
Majority of the horn line.
Majority of the horn line.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time with that, right? And doing those things and making sure that is a priority for us before the season begins.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I always think is great because like I never, I don't really get the sense that we ever even think about limiting ourselves based on based on the older members of the corps.
Yeah.
Right. Any more than we would just limit it just by being a weekend band, right? Which does bring it to its share of limitations. We can't do like the Bluecoats do sometimes, put cartwheels in the show quite as much. But that's really just because we're a weekend band, and that's we're drawing from our own talent pool and then pushing that as far as we can.
Right. When there's a cleanliness factor of that too. Like we are only a weekend band. Like you can only clean so much throughout the season, and we try to be engaging to the audience and try to keep up with the times of drum corps. But there is really only there's a limit to what you can clean.
Yeah.
When
there's only so many hours in a weekend.
12 hours a day to clean a dance routine. You know, which we do anyway because we're the Reading Buccaneers.
We try to do it all.
You try to do it all, and sometimes we get it right.
Yeah.
So, so my second thing, the second question, part of that was, do other groups do that? And I think that they have the same. I don't think that they're limited to those things. I will say I've been in other groups where membership has been more difficult, and there is a little bit more leniency in people's capabilities. There's a little bit more leniency on, hey, look, we know that you're struggling, so take every 2 reps off, and catch your breath, do whatever. There's other groups that I've been and other groups I've been a part of too that really was like, what are you doing? Get back on the field. This is not the time to go sit out. We are not doing hard shit right now, and that mentality of we'll find somebody else. We'll find somebody younger, better, faster, stronger than you are to go and get in there and do that. So I had a question for you, actually. This is something I was really interested. I've been holding this question. I haven't asked you. You started with an all-age group, right, as a young person, right, brand new baritone player, and then went to a DCI group. What do you think are some of the biggest differences, when we talk about age specifically, between being around a bunch of old heads as a teenager, right, and because there's some older people there, kids in their 20s, adults in their 20s and 30s, and then going to a group that's nothing but 20-year-olds and 18-year-olds, right? What's the vibe difference that's like most stands out to you from a person who went, as a teenager to and back and forth?
Big vibe difference. Obviously, there's a big difference between when you get to, you go to DCI and, there's a guy who I think was aging out the next year, so he'd been there for like 4 years or something. That's a long time in DCI tenure, right, to be marching. There's the difference in scope of doing that versus the first few Bucks camps I went to, where there are people who are like, oh yeah, this is my 10th year
right
here, right? And being able to like have people that have marched through different eras, because you just don't get that in DCI.
Right.
People that were able to march, that you're marching with, they got to march in like a different, march
decade.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Right.
march in a time when the drum corps activity as a whole looked completely different,
Right.
design and performance wise, than it does right now. That was one of the big aspects, right? It was getting that like sort of bit of like history,
Okay.
and also this sense of like, oh, you can just keep doing this.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That was a cool feeling to come into, right?
Right.
You're not like, oh, clock's ticking,
Right.
I only got, when I was marching, and I was like, maybe I'll march the next 2 years because I had 2 more after, before I would age out. I was like, if I wanted to, I'd only be able to get 2 more in.
Right.
And then, I get to 2019, I'm thinking, I'm like, oh my God, like, do I want to like really try and make DCI work this year and yada, yada. Not having that feeling in an all age corps, being like, it's always going to be there for you.
It's always here.
Right? You're always going to be able to come back. Makes it feel a little more dependable. And I think this might also, this is so highly dependent on the corps that you're in, but the sense of like community and family and familiarity at Bucks was generally greater than it was at Knights, because people had gotten to be there for years with each other.
Right.
And those super vets, as we call them, those super vets got to, establish and carry on, the sort of attitude and atmosphere that was in there from year to year.
Right.
Made it feel very like welcoming and familiar. Not that Blue Knights wasn't welcoming and familiar, but it just didn't have that same, that same sense of those feelings.
Consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
Continuity. Right.
And another big thing, this is how to phrase this, but like the attitude is different when all of the marching members, or at least a good chunk of the marching members, might be the same age as all the staff.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. That's a whole different conversation.
That makes the dynamic, very different.
Sure.
And not in a bad or a good way, but just a very different way. That at this point, I've marched. I guess you've marched with almost every one of them. I've marched with
either
everyone but one.
with different, when they were different corps, but probably.
Yeah, I've at this point I've marched with all but 2 people on our visual staff. Right?
Right.
I shared the field with them as performers.
Right.
That gives a whole difference in attitude versus in Blue Knights were like maybe in DCI you maybe get a couple of those for people that are fresh off tour, and the vets that have maybe marched with them. But most of the time it's like you're 19 to 21 year olds and you're being taught by like 28 to 40 year olds, right?
Right.
It feels more like a teacher student kind of relationship where you're 2 different ages and 2 different parts of your life versus, in DCA or DCI all age now, you get a host of people that are like, we have marching members that are older than almost all of our staff now.
Yeah, that's me. Exactly.
It's pretty much just Lou that's got you.
I forgot Lou. Yeah, Lou's 60,000 years old. He doesn't count.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's interesting to hear you say that too, because it's such a different dynamic for me at this age now, because when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, like these were all, you call them moms and dads, they were all my, surrogate aunts and uncles, grandparents, whatever, guys I marched with, people who were instructors. Now I'm on the flip side of it, where, I've been doing drum corps longer than some of the staff have been alive.
Yeah.
Which is always exciting. And I have seen, I've seen both things happen. I have seen, and I like to believe, and all you staff members out there that I gave shit to all those years, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
And you can comment in below how horrible I was to you if I ever was. But I like to believe that I have the same level of respect for somebody who is a younger person that is an older person, because I do not care about how old you are. I care about what you know and how you conduct yourself, right? If I gave you shit, it's probably because you probably deserved it. But, I love our visual staff right now, right? Minus Lou. Sorry, Lou. I love you.
Yeah.
I love, there's some of the best people I've ever had the pleasure of being taught by, and every single one of them are in their 20s.
Yeah.
Every single
It's a very young visual
It's a
staff.
very young visual staff, and they're awesome. They're
Minus Lou.
incredibly, minus Lou. They're incredibly great. And even Lou, which is a unique situation, he's 60 years old. He's a Hall of Famer. He marched Crossman in the 80s. You know, like he's been around forever.
He's a constant in drum corps.
He's a constant drum corps in the Northeast here. He is a secondary, really maybe even a tertiary person in that staff to a 26, 27, 28-year-old, whatever Lydia is, which she's 27,
I think.
27. She's the senior person, and Lou is 60. You know, Lou could have aged out twice before Lydia was born.
Yeah.
You know, like, and he has the utmost respect for her, and that dynamic of how those things fit together is interesting. It's fun. It's really kind of interesting to watch when it doesn't happen that way. And I have been part of groups that people on the field are older and they're more experienced and they have more things. They really what it is, they don't know their place. They think that they know best because they've been around for a long time, or this is their drum corps, and a new staff person comes in who's younger, and it is such a terrible atmosphere and so hard. You know, I really try very, very hard to make sure that I don't become that kind of person. Yeah. You know, like to make sure I'm not this, like, I joke and him and Hall about being old and, you know, like my core jacket being older than the entire staff. Yeah. But it's all jokes, because I believe, I hope that if you guys are watching right now, you understand I have the utmost respect for every single one of you, your talents and skills and what you bring to the activity, because it's tough doing what you do. You know, I think so. I think it's tough being a staff member.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that they do to earn that respect is, as long as like they're showing the same respect to members, which our staff does at the Buccaneers very well. Yeah. You know, it doesn't matter what the age difference is between staff and older marching member, as long as that mutual respect is still going both ways. You know, the dynamic is different than at a DCI Corps, but the efficiency of it and the way that it functions is no lesser for it.
Right. I think that the staff in DCA corps are more longevity as well. I think there's a much higher turnover rate in some of the DCI corps than there are in DCA.
For the same reason that we do all weekend to accommodate adult marching members. Right. Like, how are you going to expect someone who's a professional to give up even a month straight with their life, which is a third of tour?
Yeah, right? and they get paid, but it's not the greatest pay on the planet. You know, it's okay. You know, I'm sure they make they make the choice for themselves to do whatever they do. But you can see success in DCI groups that have sustainability. Like, you look at the Blue Devils, you look at Carolina Crown, who have extremely consistent staff people, who have been there year in and year out, who we were just talking about a minute ago, who generate this this vibe, this atmosphere,
create a culture.
Right? Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Create that culture of what it is. They do that very, very well. It's hard to do that in DCI unless the staff is doing that for you. In DCA, the members do it. You know, I mean, the staff does it to some extent too, but
the members can do it to a greater extent than in DCI.
Yeah, we really help reinforce that, I think, from an internal standpoint, much more than you get too much from a DCI corps. And it's only me speculating, because I never marched.
No, but even just look at what happened in the last couple of years, where basically all of drum corps was disrupted for a whole year, and then only a couple of members were able to, only a handful of the total marching population got to march in 2021. Some corps didn't even field anything. They came back, and like, I remember hearing a statistic that I'm sure this was the case all over the place, because it was in like Blue Devils or something. It was like 80% or something of their members were basically DCI rookies.
Right. Yeah,
right.
Crazy.
I'm sure that was the case in every drum corps. So what do you do then when that's the case? The members can't sustain a culture because they're all new.
Right.
What do you do? We got to come back in 22 and still have a good chunk of veteran members who had marched before, because we didn't get accidentally aged out during a global shutdown. So for these DCI corps, like, I think that's a great example of like, well, in that case, the maintaining of that culture and attitude has got to come from the staff, because they're the only ones that can even come back that year, except for a small select group that were young enough when it hit that they could come back marching the next year.
Right. So one of the other things I want to talk about, this is always something that's interesting and unique to me from an old person versus young person standpoint, is the influence that both sides of the coin have on each other, right? Because I think one of the things that, I got to, for those of you who were at DCI finals last year or watched online, I got to march with the Troopers Legacy Corps. It was awesome. So much fun. I had probably the best week of drum corps I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell you what I did, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the corps, it was incredibly inviting. They were just great. Troopers, Legacy Corps. But when I was out there with those groups, there's 200 some of us. Almost none of them knew that an all-age activity existed, right? It was wild.
Oh, yeah.
They were just like, you do what now? And they're like, oh, like alumni? I'm like, no, like competitive. I'm showing them the show last year, and our show last year, 2023 Reading Buccaneers show was awesome. It was a good show.
Very fun show.
It's fun when you go to finals and you start shaking, before you even go on, you start shaking hands with friends from other corps to go, dude, your show is incredible this year. That's a really cool feeling.
It's a cool feeling.
Yeah, because there's some years when you're just like mean mugging dudes and you're like, you're not going to win this year, because it's so close.
Yeah, or just like, if,
right.
I think Bucks is pretty consistent about putting out good shows for DCA and just for drum corps in general.
Right. Exactly.
But then you do every once in a while you get a special year. Where like even the friendly rivals have to be like,
okay,
it's a cool show. It's a cool show, man.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so like I showed a lot of those older members, those older guys, they're like, oh wow, this is like legit. And it's interesting that one of the very first questions that I get asked almost all the time when I meet somebody that was into the activity that doesn't know about DCI All-Age, how do you deal, with these kids and being a full-grown adult? Because we hear all the horror stories about DCI and all the things that happen on tour and all these age issues and just the tragedies that go on in those organizations that that are out there. And how do we mitigate that kind of stuff, or how does it even fall into play? Because I'm standing. I mean, who's next to me? Susan's next to me this year. I stand between two girls in the arc right now. Susan and Madison. One's 19 and one's 22. So and I have these two young ladies on either side of me, and I'm a 41-year-old fat guy standing in between of them. And how do we exist together in a not only a functional way just for the drum corps, but how do we exist together as friendships, right? Because drum corps is about building friendships and relationships.
Yeah. So much of it comes down to like, how is a hornline going to work together and work hard together if we don't like each other?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. So how do we bond across, those age differences where we've got, a freshly 18-year-old kid in the section with, 26, 36, and 41.
41.
Right?
Yeah,
41-year-old.
Right.
How's that vibe work? How's that dynamic? Because we have to all like each other to an extent.
Yeah.
So that we can work together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And it's a weird. So let me ask you this question, right? Because this is what I'm always curious about. As a younger member, right? How did you, I don't want to say approach or handle or befriend maybe some of the older members that you met even back then in those back years, or even now? Like you and I feel are pretty good friends now at this point. Yeah. And we have a 12 or 13-year age gap between the two of us. And you were 23 and 22, 24.
I would have been 23 at the
23. Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
And I was turning 40 that year. So there's it's a good chunk of time in between there.
Yeah.
So how did we get to this point, basically? You know what I mean? Like, and is it awkward? Is it weird to be a friend with somebody who's so much older?
Yeah.
How does that feel? How do you get into that?
Yeah. I honestly, I think so much of it comes down to the older members.
Okay.
Right? Because if you're, obviously some younger members can do this, but like if you're young and you're coming in to drum corps and you're surrounded by all these like super vets and people who are older and have like, at very different places in their life than you, it can be daunting. I'm like, well, how am I going to go up to this person, talk to them?
Right.
Like I'm a scared, anxious little high schooler. I don't know how to talk to my friends, but I don't know how to talk to like adults. So I think a lot of times then it does come down to like, the older members and the more veteran members making the first sort of move, right? And making the first like, we do a thing, we try to make it a point. Pretty much every section I think does this, where the vets are like, all the mellow section or all the trumpet section, we're all gonna eat lunch together, right?
Right.
We set up in the school and we eat our lunch wherever, and we're like, now mellows, you guys get over here, right? We're gonna be here and we're gonna make it a point to like talk to you guys, right? And I think from that, that usually if you've got a good dynamic like we've had in the past couple of years, usually that vibe and that sort of friendship is birthed still pretty naturally,
right?
Because no matter what, it's pretty easy that all of us have a shared interest.
Right.
All of us are here doing drum corps.
Sure.
Right? All of us want to be here for one reason or another. That's an immediate sort of like bridge and bond you can make.
Right.
Like I think in recent years, this might help that, you know, I'm not that much older than the age out limit.
Yeah.
But I feel like we haven't had much trouble reaching the younger kids that are marching.
Right.
Right. And like making a connection with them and making, you know, starting to build friendships so that we can all work together,
Yeah.
you know, as a horn line. I feel like it hasn't been that difficult, right? It's come pretty naturally.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
It's been weirder in previous years, but like, you know, I can think like, you know, my rookie year as a baritone, you know, there were some super vets, but they were the saltier kind of super vets.
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah, you know the ones.
Oh, I know the ones, yeah.
But, you know, and they had a much different like attitude of like, it was also, that was a slightly angry year.
Okay.
For the Reading Buccaneers. It was 15.
Oh, yeah.
We got just the piss beaten out of us for just the entire summer.
Right.
It was one of the most brutal summers I've ever had, and I was a 17-year-old rookie in drum corps. More senior members there were a lot more like, you know, saltier and just generally like, you know, they were still friendly and inviting, but they were, you know, definitely had an edge to them.
Yeah.
And that made it a little harder to be like, you know, to feel like, you know, we're all one baritone section. It felt more like there was a separation between rookies and super vets.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas in more recent years, obviously, I'm part of the latter group now.
Right.
But I think we've managed to help bridge that gap a little bit. I'm sure it's still there to an extent.
Sure.
Just because you have to, it has to be, right?
Well, I think there's personalities. There's a personality thing there too. Like, you know, you're not supposed to get along with everybody you ever meet in your entire life. You know, like some people are just going to be like, okay, we're fine, but we're not going to be best friends today. You know.
I've always contended. I've said this a little bit. I'm like, you should be a little afraid your first year of drum corps.
Absolutely.
You should be a little like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like,
keep you on your toes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like you mentioned Susan earlier. You know, there's a great example of like, you know, this happens so often. Is you get a rookie and they don't talk at all for the whole season.
Right.
Or barely, like bare minimum.
Right.
And then they come back second year and like first camp they're a different person. Pretty much.
Can't get them to shut up.
Yeah.
Susan.
You know, I see it so often, right? Yeah. It's you get to be a second year and you're like, oh wait, I know what I'm doing here.
Right.
And then that's usually when the barriers start to come down. It doesn't really matter what age you are, you start to feel more like you're a member. You know, especially then by third year, if you manage to stick around for that long.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that. When I was a young member, we don't do this anymore because we're not allowed to because the world sucks now. But we used to rookie people, you know, back in the day, you know, the amount of rookieing, I could give you 10% of the things I gave, and it would make a normal child now cry because it was brutal. Is not even the word for it. I almost lost my feet. You know, like that was a real thing that happened. Yeah. And the super vets finally they broke one time. They were like, "Oh my God, we might have killed this rookie." Like that's how bad it was.
Yeah.
For us, and you know, it was a different time, different place. Obviously,
I feel real lucky. I got the tail end of rookies getting abused a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I was just on the point where that was no longer, you know, okay.
Right.
So I got to get dished it, but I didn't get to give any back.
You didn't get it back.
I didn't get to continue the cycle of abuse.
The tradition.
Yeah.
You say cycle
the tradition.
Tradition.
The traditions of it. You know. So I got to get a little flack, but not give any out.
I will say so. I do think that there is. It kind of feeding back into that stuff, you know, like I was a tuba player for the longest time, and the tubas are just a different breed of human beings.
Yeah.
Right. And
you gotta be.
We had this thing, you know, it was at Reading for years where it was you got, and it sounds bad, so don't cancel me for this, but you got assigned a rookie every single year. Yeah, gifted, you know, rookie.
Oh, yeah.
Like here,
I love it. Honestly,
this is your rookie, right?
I kind of love the idea as you've described it.
Yeah, and it's so. I mean, really, it's not only were you responsible as the vet to take care of your rookie, you know, you got in trouble first when your rookie did something stupid, you know, and then you went and yelled at your rookie. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, why are you making me look bad? You know, and it starts to bridge some of those uncomfortable, like first year members that don't talk to anybody, you know, that are kind of there. Like you get this opportunity to, and if you do it right, and if it's really, if you have good people doing it, and this is probably why it doesn't exist anymore, because you have shitty people out there not doing the right things.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, is that you get to as a vet section, because the vet sort of section, it's like going to membership day and there's the 6 of us, 7 of us are just chalking and chatting it up, and all the rookies are just sitting there quiet because we know each other so well. As a vet section, the group of veteran tuba players that were there, we understood how to engage our younger members and take care of them. And obviously, like, we would play this game where, we would go and we would pick on somebody else's rookie, right? So that other vet could come in and defend their rookie against you. Right, so that your rookie was like, "Oh, he really does have my back." He's my hero. Like, this guy loves me. Like, and you started to be like, "Yo, leave my rookie alone. Who told you you could talk to my rookie?
Yeah, only I can talk to my rookie.
Only I can talk to my rookie. Like, you just get out of here, right?
Yeah.
And it's like this weird it's like this weird back and forth, but it really, oddly enough, it helps people kind of relax into it. And it has to be done in a fun way. Obviously, it can be done in a mean way.
Yeah.
Because that's just horrible. I mean, I can tell you right now, every rookie I had, when you look at the 2005 year, there were 12 tuba players. 8 of those kids, 7 of those kids were my rookies. That stayed for all the years that I was there, because that was my 9th season at that time. So or 8th season, whatever it was. But I had all these kids, they're kids my age. They have all these members that were mine, that I took in, and I
molded
them, into great, and so much so that they had such a good time, and almost every single one of them will probably still say to this day that being included that way really helped them connect.
Yeah.
Back to the original thing we were talking about. That's great for somebody like at your age, right? To deal with a high school kid, because you're so close. I mean, you're only 4 to 5 years really outside. Kid graduates high school at 18, you're 27, 28, whatever it is, 26, you're only 6-7 years
within 10 years.
Yeah, you're kind of close. Like, that kid, that 18-year-old can see his future in you, right? You're not that far removed, right? When you look at me, I'm 40, it becomes really difficult
when you've got a kid that's as old as them.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I have kids that are older than some of these rookies, right? That's a weird scenario, because in a way, when I was 20-some years old and I was taking in all these younger kids and these rookies, and they were becoming my best friends, and they still are some of my best friends that I've had for 20-some years, it was easy because we were so close. Now that I'm 40, it's really, really hard to befriend a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like,
what do we have in common besides this activity?
Besides that, but it just also, socially, it's creepy. You know what I mean? To some extent, and we don't make it creepy, obviously. Or I hope I don't, but it's
but it
a
is a little,
weird
you're kind of
dynamic.
like your friends,
Right.
It's kind of a Back to the Future situation.
Yeah,
Like, why are you
exactly.
hanging out with Doc Brown?
Exactly. Oh, you disgraced scientist? That's what I'm going to be from now on. A disgraced nuclear scientist.
Yeah.
But it's odd, and because for me, as the older member, one of the things that really I love about DCI All-Age is that I get to be around young people, right? It keeps me
energizing.
Young. It's energizing. It keeps me young. It keeps me pushing. It keeps me engaged. It keeps me current with whatever the heck's going on in the world in some cases.
Yeah. We had our friend Tiago, who's in Mellow section now. He's he's the third oldest person in the Corps now.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so he's up there in age.
30, he's 39, gonna be 40 this year.
He marched a bunch of different sections. I think he went from Barry to trumpet to mellow while marching just with us.
Right.
I remember when he was in the trumpet section, and he's a professor, so he already works with with college age students. But in the trumpet section in 22 and 23, he would be like, "Guys, I found this meme. I need you to explain." He'd be like, "What is a deep fried meme?" And they'd be like, "Tiago, I'm not sure you're ready for that one yet." But he would use it as a way to stay current, stay up to date on
Right.
what's happening right now. And I think it's exactly like you said. It helps you stay feeling young and feeling current. Is to be around young people and feed off their energy like a vampire.
Right. It also makes you feel old too. I dropped.
It does make me.
I dropped a Trogdor reference the other day, and our section tech did not. He's like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you've lost the internet, my young friend." And for those of you out there who know who it is, throw it up in the comment section. Just post a link, because you won't be.
Get some Trogdor.
Get some strong bad in your life,
Yeah.
because it's what you need. That's early internet.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
dawn of the internet stuff right there. And But it's you look at those old things that were so dominant in my youth, I'm like, ha 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 ha, ha. Look at us joking, like kids and all you old people.
Like
didn't know.
we talk about the old college humor Batman skits.
Oh God, yeah,
all the time. You know, go off on that.
It was like 10, 15 years old. Not even that old, 10, 11 years old.
But like most of the kids nowadays are like, what? Well, college humor doesn't even exist anymore. As a brand name,
right?
But yeah,
so you're starting to get it. You're starting to get to the years where things that were super pop culture-y in your age are no longer pop culture. Right?
I'm already like, I'm pretty much depending on like you and Tiago are like, I'm like 90% of my references. I'm like, okay, as long as those two and like a lot of times Kristen will get it too, right? As long as the older members can all still get it. Yeah, I'm good.
We're doing okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
it's one of the other.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the other coolest things. Now that we're still talking about age differences and marching with people of different ages on the field. I know you can speak a lot to this.
Okay.
But I think one of the coolest potential things in DCI All-Age that we get is we've had this situation multiple times where parents who grew up marching in drum corps get to go through that experience with their kids on the field at the same time. We've had it. Andy, our drum major, who's been there forever, got to march several years with her daughter on the field in the mellow section.
And her son too, right?
I think so. Percussionist? I think he was a percussionist. Yeah. So both of her kids. We've had Scott Silkey, if you remember him. He marched with both of his kids as well.
Yep.
Right in the brass line.
Our corps director, Rich, marched with tuba with his daughter.
Rich, yep. March in the same tuba section.
In the same section together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That and then another thing is getting to, if you're a teacher, I haven't experienced this at all yet, but Matt Heckman and some other instructors that we've had have gotten to be like, if they're a high school instructor, be like, hey, you should come to this summer activity if you really want to push yourself, and give their kids, a sort of a direct line of like, you'll know me there, so you'll know, you'll have someone to guide you a little bit, but also like, get to eventually go from like, just a teaching a student to like suddenly it's like, you're still teacher and student, but now we're on the field and we're kind of at the same level while we're here, at least while we're while we're at the weekend band.
Yeah, it's definitely unique. I mean, it's hands down one of my top 2-3 experiences in my entire drum corps career is getting a chance to march with my son, and doing all those things. He's standing behind the cameras right now, looking at me, smiling like an idiot,
smiling. Know your place, right?
He was. He was a 14-year-old bonehead in the baritone line. He had no idea what he was doing. And it was watching him as a parent, right? Watching him grow and develop as a young man, as a responsible person, as a performer, as a musician. There's nothing else better. I mean, it's absolutely, you look at stuff like that and you go, maybe I did something right as a parent. Because you're always questioning that. Maybe you'll have kids someday and you'll be like, I'm going to do all the things wrong. And my kid's going to be a silly, silly person. And you'll be like, I hope he doesn't, I don't know, grow up and eat people for a living. Like that's all you hope, for a living. Yeah, for a living, you got to work at something, do your passions. Yeah. But like you just hope that those things aren't good. So when you watch kids, especially your own kids, like I find that in some of the younger members too that are around. I have a lot of parents that come up to me and go, hey, my son, my daughter talks about you all the time. Like you've been a huge success. You've been a really big help, bridging that high school gap. And for me to be able to do that with my own children, like it's awesome. It's nothing better. I stand next to them at finals and, we, get medals and we take pictures and, it's memories that, at some point, all kids grow up and leave their parents and go away, and like you only get a few of those years. So having that is unbelievable. Right. And you can't have it anywhere else. You just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Physically, it's impossible.
It's impossible. Right? You can't do it in junior corps, right? Unless you're having kids at 3. So,
So then you got bigger issues.
Yeah. And then you got to have your 3-year-old march with you when you age out. Like that's not. That doesn't make any sense. So it's really a neat thing. And I don't know that I've experienced this yet. I know I've seen it in an alumni corps where a grandfather marched with his son and his grandson, which is, and that's an alumni corps. So, they're not doing quite as much as what we're doing right now, really. Yeah. They're not doing anything close to what we're doing. But that's got to be a super cool thing.
But it's still cool. It's still, you still get to work towards something and put something and be on the same field as potentially 2 generations.
Part of me really, really wants to try and do that, like, and compete still, like, at a high level. And there's only one thing, I'll be like 60-something at that point, right? And the other thing, too, is that one of my kids has to have a kid like now. And I don't want that at all. Like I don't need to have grandchildren yet. That's insane. Right. But But yeah, no, I think it's great. You know, it's a
Yeah.
neat experience to have as a parent, like you said. And I hope that it's a good experience. You know, my kid grows up and goes, yeah, that was an awesome experience for me to
Yeah.
be with my dad and do all these other things too. It's cool.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's also, you made me kind of think of this, or like in terms of like watching people grow. I think it's a really cool experience that you get to have as like a more veteran member in
Yeah.
a senior corps. Especially you know, usually it's like when a young person comes in, you get to see them grow, as we kind of talked about, you know, growing from first to second year. But particularly the experience of getting to see a kid that you march with that started off as like a scared, quiet, confused, like not sure where they're going on the field kid,
Right.
getting to watch them grow up, become more confident, and then march DCI.
oh yeah.
And it's like it feels like almost like the drum corps equivalent of like, you know, they're leaving the nest.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, we've got where have we got? We've got people, someone from the male section who's marching scouts this year,
Yep.
which is great. We've got Grace at
Crossman.
yeah, and Bones
And
at
Bones.
Bones.
Yeah. And at Crossman. And Darwin went to Troopers.
He's a Troopers now.
He's a Troopers
Yeah.
this year.
Or Ethan, who was a trumpet for
Crown.
2 years at Crown.
Yeah. He was at Cadets last year.
Yeah. We got to see. What?
Oh, Adam. Adam
Oh.
from the Mellophone line. Yeah.
Yeah,
Our-
Adam.
our-
Blue Stars.
Blue Stars. Talk about a kid that you
Matt
watched.
Greco,
Talk about a
Cadets.
kid you watched as a very scared,
Yeah.
you know, like to himself kid grow into somebody who can dish out a comment or two here and there and be funny and
Yeah.
like be engaging and really just grow into
Yeah. They
being
can
a
pull
young man.
compliments from the box.
Yeah,
In the second year.
Super
right?
cool. I'm really proud of him this year. Like that
Yeah.
was a big one for me. I was like,
Yeah.
yes, go get
But
it.
it's
man.
also, it's great being able to see that and then knowing that, you know, they're going out there and they're doing the DCI thing. They're doing the full tour thing.
Right.
And it's awesome. And knowing that, you know, if they want to come back to home, you know, they get to come home after that,
Yep.
you know, and still have a place where they can continue that passion. And then, you know, I feel like that's, you know, it almost makes a form of separation of like, you know, of like different tiers as well. Of like,
Right.
oh, you got to you got to go do the thing. You got to go watch DCI.
Right.
Not everyone does, obviously.
It's like
it's-
you ever see the movie 300?
Yeah.
It's like sending the kid out when he turns
To go fight
11
the wolf
to go
in-
fight
in
the
the
wolf,
woods
and
or
he comes
whatever.
back a man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's a lot like what it is. You know?
Yeah, because they come back and they're like, I've done tour.
Yeah,
You're
I'm like,
yeah,
I
you
don't-
have.
Yeah, you're like, you're a grizzled veteran now. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like being in the military and going to war. Like, I don't think you understand what I've seen. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like exactly. So it's super cool. And you know, that's the other thing too. If you're watching this and you are a DCI veteran, you know, you can go find course. Like you can go
Yeah.
find places to go. There's a lot of different DCA stuff out there. There's groups in Ohio right now. The Grenadiers, where they're up in Wisconsin, I think. They're all up there. Minnesota Brass is around. I'm sure you may have heard those names too. It's a lot of East Coast. Atlanta CV is down in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's down in Atlanta. They're down there, and they're great organizations. Every single one of them. And I know I have friends in probably every single drum corps across the country at this point.
Yeah.
And all of them say great things about the organizations. They all, and I'll say the same thing. I've been in multiples, and we all kind of work exactly the same way. Like there's no big difference. Like you don't have to wear. You can look at all the jackets. You know, like you know, go around and get some experience. Go have some fun. You know, don't be afraid to get out there and be a part of a group, or at least try. You know, why not?
And here's my call to action. This is my thing I'm going to try
love
and manifest. And it also brings up another great point about, you know, we've talked about the difference between DCI All-Age and DCI, you know, World and Open. Biggest thing is now that we're here, right, and we can compete at shows with open class and world class corps at the same time in the same fields. We talked about how you know, DCA has forever been regional, in a sense,
right.
because you just can't organize groups in, you know, groups on the West Coast,
Right.
operating and then coming to Rochester for finals.
It's hard, yeah. The Renegades
Or-
did it for years, and they
Yeah.
were. I mean, I
Or
don't
getting
understand how
to
they
pretty
did it.
much go to like any competitions there. But now that we can do shows at open and world class corps, and that's gonna be a normal thing. They can come to our shows and we can go to their shows.
Right.
I'm hoping that we'll, in a few years, start to see some new groups pop up from places like Texas or, you know, the Midwest or West Coast.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, take DCI All-Age, this All-Age circuit, and finally make it like nationwide.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the call to action. If you're there and you're like, oh, well, I'm in Texas, I've aged out. I got some friends that would love to keep marching, but where are we going to go? Right? Maybe Atlanta CV because they're, but even then it's like, that's a huge difference.
Yes, it's such a long drive, right?
Like take the initiative, start a DCI all age corps, go
Yes.
for it.
Get
Do
out
it.
there.
I would love to see some groups
God.
where, being able to pull in the talent and drive from places like Texas
Right.
and the West Coast and show, a
It almost,
really, really punch up. Like I would love to be like sweating bullets every year in competition. Like, oh God, because now we've opened up the playing field to everyone, ideally.
Yeah.
Right. That would be my ideal for DCI all age. I would love to see groups from anywhere, both just to like to punch up and have just more cores being more competitive all the time, but also so that everyone gets to participate.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, I don't know, you age out and you live in Texas or something, like, what are you gonna?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to over the years that are like, hey, they reach out and go, yo, I saw your show this year. It was awesome. On Box 5 or Flow Marching, wherever they saw it. And like, I really wish there was something in my area that I could be a part of like that.
Yeah.
Right. And, I will tell you this one thing that's been really cool the last couple of years is watching the Ohio contingent really explode. It's like 4 or 5 drum corps in Ohio now. And there wasn't. And for a hot minute, there was a group in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is, west coast of PA. And then Pittsburgh had a group for, I think, Steel City Ambassadors is still a thing technically. So there's a lot of groups out there that are, maybe not as large. That was my hope when Sound Sport came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That my hope was that Sound Sport, again, natural evolution, they were going to take these smaller groups of people, they were going to move up, and they were going to do these things. And I think that's still the general idea is for them to move into a junior corps status. Well, that was back then. Well, now you have DCI all age. So now you can move into, it doesn't have to be a DCI group. You don't have to turn into and just ostracize your entire people who have spent all these years putting together the Sound Sport group. You can just be a DCI all age group now, and you can come and compete. Get out of the convention center next door and come into the big stadium and do cool stuff in front of bigger crowds. And do those kind of things.
Yeah.
Get
that sense of competition.
Yeah,
again,
get that sense of competition.
Great for driving.
Members
innovation in the activity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it only gets better the more you have, the more people that compete in it. It always boggled my mind why Texas and California didn't have their own circuits because
like
it's
a
so
little
much
circuit,
it's so much easier. Well, I mean, it's a little hotter in the summertime. I get it, but it's so much easier to get started so much sooner.
Yeah.
Right. Like we
You don't have to deal with, like we did last weekend, freezing our faces off trying to
you
move
can
and
go
play.
outside and learn drill in January. Like you really can. So and you see it all the time through DCI, all their posts, like there's, outside. I'm like, where are they at right now that it looks this nice? It's January,
That's why the course keep moving that's why Boston moved to Florida.
Right, exactly. Like they do all these things all over the place. So it makes total sense to me, So from an all age group standpoint, why not go down there and start those circuits up and get those things going?
Yeah. I'm hoping that's the end result of this. That's like my my ideal situation.
Right. And going back to this full circle back to the end of last episode when we talked about what our hopes and dreams were of this podcast was really just bring some light to the activity and start to drum up conversations about how do we get this stuff happening more and and how do we support that, how do we get it moving forward, what can we do as an online community to kind of help make the activity just more user friendly, more available to people. Which that brings us to our last talking point we haven't talked about yet. Cost. Right.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about cost yet. So again, junior core versus, it used to be called senior core back in the day, but we don't call it that anymore because we don't make it feel like all age.
Yeah.
Junior, that you have your DCI, then you have your all age section. Tour fees are what, somewhere around like 5,000 to 6,000 right now.
By now, yeah, probably.
Yeah, they're pretty.
I probably paid around 3,500 to 4,000, and it's jumped up. Probably like 4,000. Well, it's 4,000. Then they're like, you have to buy the $300 brass package.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was like, put that on my tour.
Yeah, just put it in my. I know, right. And our dues this year are 2,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is higher even than they have been previously because we've been integrated into DCI ALL-AGE and we got to travel a little more and do a little more stuff.
Yeah. I mean, our dues are a little much higher this year because of the DCI ALL-AGE and traveling to where we're going.
That's the big thing.
It's a huge thing. But I think honestly, I think a lot of the all age cores are a little scared by the change because we've been doing the same thing for so long that, we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We're competing against all these upper big groups. And DCI has been awesome in that process, because I don't think the directors really understood like what they were getting involved in. All they looked at was all this extra work they're going to have to do. But DCI is a great support, process. They have a 30, 40 member, full-time staff that's helping coordinate a lot of these things for us. It's taking a lot of the stress and strain off of, challenges because it's changing, but a lot of stress and strain off of that stuff too. So I think it's going to really help.
Yeah.
This year we'll really see like what the really true the cost is, associated with that too. So it's kind of the same thing. We look at pros versus cons between the two activities. If you're regional and you say you want to go in March with, a top 6 core at some point before you age out, you have all these tiny cores here that are more reasonable expense, for your if you're younger, you're probably your parents paying for it. And you can still work a summer job.
Yeah.
You can
that's huge, right?
You can still work to pay your dues, and you can still work to just survive in life. And if you're older, and you have a regular job, it's just a weekend, it makes it so much easier. So the cost, and I think we're going to do another segment about this another time. So I don't
really
dig
into it. Yeah.
You really dig into the cost. But I will tell you is that my theory is, and I'm going to say this now, before I do any of the research on it and the actual math numbers on it.
Yeah. Play some over-under bets on how whether or not he's right.
I think when you take everything into consideration, DCI All-Age is actually more expensive than DCI. For all you haters out there that complain about about the cost of a junior core tuition, they're like, how are we expecting these kids to pay this money? Number one, pay the money. What are you going to do? Go to college and get that experience?
You probably already are, and that costs 10 times as much.
Yeah, 10 times as much, and I guarantee you will get more out of a life skill going on tour than you will ever get from going to college and just getting drunk on the weekends because you're at college.
Or studying.
Studying. So what, memorize a bunch of stuff you're not going to remember? Masters in chemistry? Like, okay.
Masters in education, I'll have you
excuse
know.
Me. So I'm sorry. You
just
can
my
tell
bachelor's in chemistry.
But like you'll get so much more out of that experience. Like I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you can figure out how to get to college. I'll pay for you to go on tour, all day. I will happily take out a loan to make sure you can go on tour, because I think that there's more growth in things like that than there is in that. So again, back to my original point is I think that DCI All-Age is more expensive dollar for dollar for the whole year than a DCI tuition to go on tour.
All right. I think you're crazy.
I don't think I am.
I think you lost it. We'll do an episode where we crunch the math.
Yeah.
I think first of all, even if you take out the opportunity cost of being able to work over the summer. Yeah. Right. Which I'm assuming.
Yeah, because you can't. I'm not trying to subtract what you can earn. Yeah. Right? I'm just talking about straight cost.
Which I think that has an economic benefit to look at
absolutely.
that.
100%.
Yeah. Even subtracting that out, I think you're out of your mind.
Okay. I think I'm right.
So we're gonna hash it out. One of these episodes. I don't know which one it will be.
It's coming up soon. It's gonna be a big one.
We'll get some whiteboards and figure out the math of it,
and just do the math
and really dig into it to see which one of us is right.
Because we're running a podcast and we have to use whiteboards. We can't just put it on an Excel spreadsheet and throw it up on the page while we're talking.
You gotta do whiteboards. So you gotta be able to erase and
that's
redo
true.
it. As a guy that works with whiteboards basically every day while he's in school.
Okay. I thought you said like I got a guy who's got whiteboards. Like
I got a whiteboard guy. Don't you worry.
Guys, don't worry about this. I got a whiteboard guy. He's going to come in. He's going to get us what we need.
Yeah I know you're having trouble finding whiteboards these days, but don't worry. I got one that comes under the table.
I know 2022 hit hard, but I got my whiteboard connection.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's going to be fun. That's a great one. But I stand firm by that it's I bet you that it's more than $5,000-$6,000 that you're going to spend.
All right.
So
we'll see.
And I'll get creative about. I'm going to try not to get ridiculous creative and adding all my nonsense into there too.
Well, we can like take data every weekend or something like that, right?
I think you just take expenses. I was just going to take averages. Just the average. I mean, listen, just the average cost of travel, driving back and forth, and then all the places you go and all the times you go eat out, and buying lunch and dinner that you have to go. Like, stuff starts to add up. After a while.
I think we got enough now. We can save it for.
We got enough. Listen, they don't tell the people what they want or they don't want.
Yeah.
They don't know. Maybe they want more. Do you want more?
You got to leave them wanting more.
Oh, that's
you always got to leave them wanting more. You never want. Well, I had this one, and I had performance improv in college. And we were always like, we'd rather have a game or a scene go short rather than have it go long.
Yeah,
because if it's short, you go, oh, that was. You have the audience going, that was so funny. I wish they could have kept doing that. Whereas if you go too long, people are like, Still on this one, huh?
Okay, yeah,
Right.
got it.
Same thing with podcast, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
Some too long. So to wrap up, don't forget to get out there, hit that subscribe button, get these views up. We're trying to give money back to you, the people out there. We can only do that if you're going to like what we're doing, if you're going to watch what we're doing. Put us on in the background, put us on in the car. Do something, run them minutes up. Okay, hit that subscribe button. If nothing else, it makes me and Robbie feel better that people like us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, and if we're doing calls to action, we did this whole episode. Look up some DCI all age groups that are, just look at what we do, check it out, right? Look up if there's groups in your area that you might be interested in. If you, have been considering drum corps, you want to weigh your options.
Yeah. Now's the time to look at it for next year.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as a little sneak preview for the future, we are planning on having some people from some of those DCI groups, DCI all-age groups, coming in and kind of telling you about the organizations and how they function, longevity, the history, those kind of things. We've been around for 70, 80, some of us, 90 years. So, we have a long history in the activity as well, too, just like
Storied
the DCI
histories.
course. Yep. So stick around, come back and check us out.
Yep.
We'll have some other things to talk about. And thanks again for watching.
Yeah. Off cycle.